Hi, everyone. Today we are talking to Scy Heidekamp, a creative technologist and the founder of Qtures. Hi and welcome, and happy to have you here.
Hi. So happy to be here on your show.
Before we dive into the episode, for people who don't know you yet, could you introduce yourself and describe what you do?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Sky Heidekamp. I am from the Netherlands, and lived in many places. But yeah, I've been working as a creative technologist for the last few years, meaning that I'm always in the intersection of art and technology, of like the creative field and like full coding development and new technologies, and that has excites me for a very long time. And so I've been doing partly as like how do you call it, entrepreneur, working on different projects, and partly working on like bigger projects, and also this year started a company called Qtures to document creative processes. So the fact that I like build the platform for documentation of creative processes already kind of in that intersection of creative and technology.
Yeah, that's really a lot, and I'm really excited to dive into everything. I don't even know what to start with. I guess let's start with the term creative technologist. Could you describe
Mhm.
what that is for people who don't know that?
I think definitely these days almost all creatives do something with technology, even if it's just, digital drawing or working on the computer. Like, we're all into technology. I think the term creative technology is something not really that is given to you, but more something that you claim by a certain mindset, where you always like to use as much as possible new technologies for very creative and artsy ideas. So when I have an idea, and I have, like, for example, something comes to me. I can give an example. Like, I saw my dog running on the field, and I saw his flappy ears, and I thought that is so cute. Like, how do I capture this? Like, how can I like give this fun, cutesy feeling also on others to enjoy? And then I start thinking, like, what technologies can I use? So it's kind of looking for technologies to bring your creative ideas to life. And so I came up with this idea for like building a game, or building a VR game, or like a 3D web browser game using like 3JS, like some coding languages to build it in a browser so people can easily access it. So it's that kind of like using cool new technologies to bring creative ideas to life.
Wow. There's a lot going on. That's for
Yeah.
sure. How did you get into all of that? I mean, I'm sure that it started with something and then probably led you into all these different parts or fields. Could you tell us what it all started with?
Yeah, sure. I think it already started when I got born, because my mom, she is like super creative. So she's very like handcrafting things, and like very, yeah, she just loves to decorate things. And my dad was technologist, like he was in IT. The attic was filled with computer parts and like first computers and stuff. So I think I was born in the middle, which is very funny because I'm also the middle of like three sisters. So I'm like really like the both worlds, where I grew up in, where I got excited about it really early on, like to build things, like to take, for example, I had this little scooter. I would take it all apart to see the little pieces, how things fit together. But I also loved drawing, and so I went into art school at first, because I didn't really know what I wanted, and I was just good at drawing. So I went to art school, and there I really early on already learned some HTML coding to bring like your website to life or so, and that already got me super excited. Then I learned things like video editing, and working with these softwares and all these kinds of, yeah, kind of digital stuff got me actually even more excited, because it was, yeah, that overlap. And so during my bachelor's in multimedia design, I already started playing with 3D programs and some other coding languages that I used to prototype some ideas. Yeah, just realizing that anything is possible. Like, I can have an idea and I can just kind of like craft it together. That just got me really excited. And so I just keep learning more and more things. I keep learning more and more softwares to work with. And then, yeah, it kind of led to this point where I feel like now I call myself a creative technologist. Yeah.
I feel like you truly deserve that term.
Thanks.
From what I'm hearing, there's like a lot going on, and I was dabbling into Free.js and trying it a little bit, but I'm like kind of stuck at the idea of forming 3D things.
Mhm.
That's like the next level for me. That's kind of like where I
Yeah.
stop being a creative technologist in a sense and just like, yeah. Um, Also, one more thing, since you're like learning a lot of things and kind of like not sure how to describe it, like to stay on the on the standard side.
I don't even know what that means.
No?
Mm-mm.
Okay, well, let me rephrase the question. Since you're like learning a lot of emerging technologies, you mentioned Free.js, and I'm assuming Blender. I mean, they're not so emerging anymore, but there are a lot
Yeah.
of like different things going on there, and I'm assuming you're also like an adopter of AI and newer technologies. How do you like stay motivated and to learn all these different crafts or all these different technologies? Because, for example, me, I sometimes get like a really high fatigue. Like not another
Mhm.
tool, not another technology. I'm like, I'm so done right now. How do you stay
Yeah.
motivated to like really learn all these new tools?
Yeah, because I can like these days, like it goes so quickly. Like a new tool pops up every day that needs exploring, right? So I kind of yeah, I can definitely feel that sometimes, but I think it's because I'm not really so much of a let me explore everything. Like I do like it, but I was just kind of selective. But I come more with a goal. Like for example, I have this goal of building this 3D game. So I'm gonna learn this 3D program and then right away try to like somehow in a real I mean, first versions are always very limited, but limited way kind of like prototype some first sort of version. And yeah, I use AI actually the same way. Like I know there are so many AI tools out there and a lot of them like deserve the attention that and I get excited about when I hear about them. But since I haven't had to use them for anything that I would like to pursue, I didn't like look into all of them. So I usually kind of start only with a goal. And then when you have something in mind or some sort of vision or some sort of like idea that you want to bring to life, then that's kind of what motivates me because then it really comes from my own like inspiration and this kind of like I know I know it's possible. Like anything these days is possible. So I'm gonna like do it somehow, like somehow use the some of the tools that are there for it.
Yeah, I really love that approach. It's like takes like you have the goal and then you're like, okay, this is my goal and what tools can I use to achieve that
Yeah.
goal? And that's a
Yeah.
really cool approach, to see the big picture first and then just use
Yeah, and
whatever
that
is
really
available.
helps. That really helps also because yeah, exactly like you said, there's just so many things. Like if I only would work from things that excite me, I will probably try a lot of things that really didn't really yeah, like help me much at that moment of like getting somewhere, I guess.
Um, well, since we're on the topic of AI, I wanted to ask you how, like, okay, wait. Since we're on the topic of AI, has AI changed your way that you approach creativity?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I it's definitely super fast. Like everything changing, everything's upside down. I feel like we're getting into areas that we didn't expect to get to so quickly. And so everyone's needing to adapt and to change. So I started actually with AI really early on, like when it was 2020. I started my master's in future design, and this is when I got first in touch with AI. And at that point, it was really not as useful as it was now in the creative field, but it was very experimental and very kind of exciting and not many people knew about it yet. So it was kind of this small AI community of artists starting out with AI. And it was very fun kind of like experimental environment, and when it became bigger and bigger, that kind of like faded away. So now it's like, now it's everywhere, everyone knows about it, everyone's trying it out or at least using it in some ways. And I'm like trying to find certain similar uh emerging technologies that are still in that super, super early stage for artists or for creatives. That's also how I started like getting interested in like quantum mechanics and stuff, which is definitely something also very, very interesting to talk about. But it's, I guess this opens me up to like approaching creativity with much more of a like experimental ideas, like, oh, I can actually get to whole different things. Like, for example, when I would try some AI things, then it didn't become pretty, but it became very like almost like abstract or almost like old film that, or like some of the pixel art that is like, it's not specifically like the most realistic or the most like beautiful, but it has some very fun kind of like feel to it. And so this kind of like abstract experimental part that I discovered with AI back then is still something that I like to, yeah, like to like come back in my work and in my ideas.
Wow. Okay. Um, well, you touched upon quantum creativity, or is that what you said? I'm not sure
Mhm.
if I want to move there yet, but it's definitely somewhere where I put like a bookmark to get back to. Um, since you are saying that you were an early adopter of AI and you like kind of experienced AI before it really was like let out to the mainstream masses, what did it look
Mhm.
like back then? Can you describe it a little bit?
Yeah, of course. Like in some of the, I was, for example, invited to the Wave One first version of Mid Journey, and back then, if you would write something like "I want to see a unicorn cloud," it would look like maybe like 5% like a unicorn cloud, but the rest would be just, you know, like it had that feel like it would be maybe like purple, white-ish, maybe some pink, and then you could kind of vaguely see some unicorn in it, but the rest was just messy and like pixelated, like, so, but because you were using some words and you could see how it is trying, that was like, wow, it did something, you know, like it actually listened to my words. And the same, like I would type in like like a fighter ant or something, and it didn't look like an ant at all, but it had these kind of like very pointy edges, some black and red, like and on some sort of stone surface, that it looks almost like it could be some sort of like creature. But it was just very different than it is now, because now if you try, you will get something that looks like exactly what you said. But back then it was just more of like being amazed and in awe of like, wow, I just gave it some words and it actually somewhat fitted to those words. Yeah.
It was like in baby shoes.
Yeah,
Yeah, really.
it must have been interesting to see how it interpreted things differently to how
Yeah.
humans interpret that,
Mhm.
which must have
Yeah,
been an
definitely.
interesting
And
part of like the journey of AI.
Definitely. I only
yeah.
remember like the video of Will Smith eating cereal, I
No,
think.
spaghetti.
Spaghetti.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
was eating
I
something.
just saw that today again. Yeah, there was like a side by side comparison of then versus now. And it's only been a
Yeah.
year or something since that first version came out. So like you said, it's like gotten really good really quickly.
Yeah,
Um
definitely.
on the topic of it being just so much better than it used to be, and also at like a level where you can really almost just use it as it is. Do you feel like AI is going to replace creative people? And if yes, in what way? And if no, why?
Mhm. I I wouldn't say like replacing directly. It's gonna take parts away of the work that we do now, and it's gonna change things more. Like it's gonna change how we do creative. Um, I think like replacing is something very like fearful, and people feel scared about it. And I like to think of it a bit more hopeful in a way of like we can leverage this and really use it in ways to, even if you don't want to work with it in your art directly, you can use it to become efficient, to better negotiate about your prices, to learn from or to research in these kinds of ways. But what I also really, really notice with AI now bringing a lot of fast and quick results. I sometimes like to call it like fast food images, like or fast food creativity. Like it brings it so quickly and with so low effort, basically new results. So when we're just looking at like creativity as in shape of results, then it's like increasing it so much and so much blending with actual like just human creativity and results, that the value of results is just going down because we can get there much faster. We don't need the whole process anymore. Basically, you can just really quickly write something and get the result. So I do think it's really like changing the value of creativity and the value of creative work. But that's why I also really think it's really important to share the process, because if there's something that gets more and more value, it's this process where it's not just about the output, but where it's really about like I take inspiration from here, or I take a brief and I think about it and I use everything I've ever imagined or everything I've ever experienced and my own imagination and maybe inspiration, yeah, like and put that all together in the mix. That's where the value comes from, because that is like something so unique to every person that you cannot really like, yeah, it's not something you can find it as training data. This is your unique human experiences. So that value is also what really will make people stand out, and what eventually brands will be looking for, because results will be yeah, easy to get. So people who can really like direct the process, and really like art direct their own work, basically, I think that's going to be more and more important and more valuable, and that you cannot really replace.
I think we're almost maybe not at that scale, but I feel like we are already kind of there, especially when the globalization of the service industry started, and there are people making, I'm just like, for example, logos for $50, or
That too, yeah.
yeah, like things like that. Those are also very output oriented approaches of the
Mhm.
service-based industry, so they can offer it cheaper because the
Yeah.
value is in the output and not in the process. So
Yeah.
I think that I agree with you there that with AI, it's gonna be even more and more devalued, and that's a bit of I know that you're like pretty hopeful, and I think I'm like maybe your I don't know how to say, like the
Opposite.
opposite of that, because it's like it's a bit scary to have like to be in a field that's already devalued,
Mhm.
getting even more devalued.
Yeah, although
But
I'm not
don't you
sure if the
think
whole field is devalued, but yeah, like it's changing for sure. Like it's like shifting on the different kind of sides of things, I'd say.
but don't you think there's not a big difference between the logos you would get on Fiverr, which are output based, and you don't have this process, you don't have this like person behind it putting in their art direction and their process? Isn't that the same as something produced by an AI? I feel like it's not. I feel like, to go back to being a little more hopeful about the situation, I think it's not that different to what has already happened in our industry, which is you have these output based
Yeah.
freelancers on platforms like Fiverr, creating work that is very generic. It's nothing very specific to whoever buys it. And then you have the other side of the industry, which is creating very custom, very tailored to the client work. And the price of those two services is completely different, even if the output is the same,
Yeah.
because of the process, because of the person behind the work and the value that has. So I feel like it's not a huge difference with AI. I think what's changing is that people can now make their process faster. And if they're able to use AI in a way that doesn't, they're not creating AI fast food, like you said, then I think they can speed up their process, keep their prices the same, and if anything, it would benefit people.
I
Yeah, I
agree. I just meant about the scale. like currently, I don't think the scale is as big as you can have it with AI. I think that's the difference where I see the difference.
What do you mean by scale?
Like the scale, like right now, you would need to hire someone to do that output-based service. I would say like maybe lower quality in terms of the output than maybe someone who spends a lot of time on the process. Whereas now with AI, you can just like go do it yourself even.
But you really think a client would know how to create a website on with using AI and would even want to bother with that?
I'm not saying yes, but I'm saying a lot of people would see it as a devaluing act because it is even easier now, because before you even had to like search for a service
Mm,
provider, now you can just enter a prompt.
You're saying
yeah.
they're gonna say, "Oh, you can just make it with AI, so why is it so expensive?"
Mm,
That the
maybe
clients
that
will
could
view it
be.
that way? Okay.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
example.
that I see happening for
Yeah.
sure.
I also think that the people who are now like really like outputs working fast on a result are also the ones that maybe hire to do it with AI, because it's not so much of a difference for them anyways, and it will be kind of like a nice way to quick, fast get to result, make a little bit of money from it. So I think like it's also one of the topics that uh that we talked about, I think before or at the Cold Festival, is um like for certain purposes, like it makes more sense almost to use fast output results or AI generated results, because they are not so important or not so they're not really like the thing that represents your brand or your business. It's more like some picture in the background or like something that kind of filler content almost, compared to when you really want something to bring your message to the world and to your audience. That then you want to stand out, like then there is a part of like your mission or your vision that you're trying to bring, yeah, with your work. And that's maybe also a big difference between the two.
Yeah, well, speaking of processes, how do you currently use AI for your processes?
I use it I use it quite a lot in different ways. So I would say like inspiration usually still comes from me as like to me in like a weirdest moment, like when I'm in bed or in the shower on a walk, like have this idea and then I kind of develop it with my thoughts and I just kind of like start researching. And I think that's already where I start using AI, because I feel like researching these days, like I can go type things in Google. I also recently learned the next generation just types things in TikTok, but I also can just write things in ChatGPT and like try to like research and like really like find out. Or well, I always still stick with kind of from what I learned during my bachelor's in multimedia design is the design thinking process, or just start with empathy, you know, like put yourself in someone's shoes who would be using this, or like what are all the things you need to know about it, and then I start to kind of like create some sort of plan. Yeah, the planning, I guess I still really do manually because I don't like too many of the AI tools in that. But then when ideation, like this kind of like coming up with ideas and yeah, like combining ideas, I think I still really love combining different ideas and different concepts. Um talking to people, different people to kind of get inspiration from others. I also really love doing is also definitely something where I come across AI content, like or um, sometimes for things like mood boards and stuff that can really help. But when it comes to execution, I would say I use it the most because it's not like I like to really like execute things at once, but in different steps I can use different pieces. So for example, for prototyping, I'm definitely using AI. Even though I can build things myself these days, I can build it and code it, but I'm just not so fast. And I don't have like in-depth technical background like a software engineer. But with just the coding skills that I have and AI prototyping tools, I can do it so much faster. Like I can build something in an hour basically and have a first version and I can show it to people and like kind of like test it with people and stuff. So yeah, I would say there I used a lot. In content, like if I'm creating visuals and stuff, more for inspiration, but I do like kind of still the human touch to things because I can use it. Like, for example, when I was making stickers, I like to use the AI for kind of inspiration and then draw it myself because I still feel like you can see the difference or so. Like I feel like there is just more of a feel to it when you do things manually compared to when AI does it. But then some people are so good at prompting that and I, I think like they can create something that has that feel as well. So I totally see prompting as a legit kind of like skill for creating artworks, because it also takes like your imagination and your kind of like being able to wording, just like writing basically is. So yeah, I use it everywhere, bits and pieces. It's fully integrated into my processes.
One of the criticisms I've seen of AI is that it's stealing from basically everything. It takes everything it has, so like everything on the internet, which means it's stealing from people who created that work originally.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if it's something visual or if it's written work, because I've like had discussions with people before and I'm like, I use it for my LinkedIn post and like, how is that me stealing from like a creative writer? But they would say to me then there's that ChatGPT is still using like the writing from people who wrote original posts to create
Yeah.
your post. So that's how it comes into like this topic of ethics. So how do you feel about the ethics of AI in that sense that it's stealing from people who have made original work?
Yeah. I really I've thought about this so much and I am really like I don't like how it's been done in the past. It's not possible anymore to kind of like correct it in the models that are existing trained on people their works, and I really don't like how it's done, but I do really am optimistic that we've as an art industry or like creative industry, I feel like we made a really good point and it became trials and like it became kind of like lawsuits, and we really pointed out like this is not okay. And I'm really glad we did because I think now there are, and I know it already started a few years ago, but it started very very slowly, where models are being built where artists and like people whose work are in the data sets are actually contributed or they're actually uh, okay with being trained on it. So it's becoming like there are gonna be more and more opportunities out there, but of course they are always like a step behind because it's like they can train on everything and like the more data there is the better the model, so it's going to be always a bit more higher quality with the non-legal models than the than nicely ethically trained models that are out there, and they're just kind of a step behind, which really sucks. But I hope that like now that we know and now that we can much more be careful with our work, and there are more like rights around it, like revoking your work for the training and these kinds of things. And I think also like for example with my platform Qtures, trying really to be transparent which part was AI, which part was inspiration from others, which part was you, so that you can kind of like trace back where you really deserve the credit because this was yours and someone shouldn't be able to steal that and like work with that. So yes, I do really agree that in the past it was really done wrong, and but I'm really hopeful for the future that now we will be doing it better.
Is that also your inspiration for building Qtures?
Partly, I my inspiration is more about how, yeah, like how we can share our creative process more because this is becoming more and more valuable. But while in that process, I think it's so important to keep this in mind, like exactly to let's do it right from now. And I think, and I know a lot of companies are also more and more taking attention to this and making it much more transparent on what they're doing with which data.
Speaking of Qtures, can you tell our audience what it is, for
Yeah.
people who don't have never heard of it before?
Yeah, of course. So I created Qtures as a platform to document the creative process. So instead of focusing on the result, it's really about sharing from your very first idea and then like adding to that idea with kind of journaling so that you can show kind of like how you got to a result. Because what I've noticed when I was talking to a lot of different creative people from all kinds of different creative directions is that we get so little to see from each other the creative process, and we're also not sharing it with the world. So how is the world supposed to know where the creative value is if they only see the results? So I just want to make it more visible, more yeah, like valuable in that way. And I have this part where I really want yeah, like it to be supported and to help to bring that value back and hopefully get paid better as creatives so that we can show, you know, this is our work and not just like show a result as this is our work.
That's so real.
I think that's so important because this is something we talk a lot about when we're speaking about pricing. And it's that the client only sees an output. Also, when they're like thinking about what they need, they only see the final product. They're like, I need a website, I need a logo, I need whatever.
Yeah.
And then you get name a price, and often they're shocked because they associate the price with that final output and not with what you put into it. And I think that's so valuable to speak about the process and to make the process more visible also to potential clients. There's a lot of education that's still needed within our industry, just between us and clients, because clients don't understand what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why they say things like, oh, but I can do this in like 5 minutes, or like, this should only take 10 minutes, because they have no idea what the process is actually like.
It's also super valuable for our next generation of creatives because if they're gonna grow up and they're not gonna see the process and the value is going down and there's only so many results with AI even making it more, then like how are they gonna stay motivated to like experiment and try things out and stuff? So yeah, it's like partly generation and like yeah, and of course for the client and for the people who will be supporting yeah, the creative industry.
I haven't thought about that, about the process getting lost as soon as like AI's quotation marks take over. Kind of like the new generation of creatives is probably be more like prompting more. That's really interesting. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, the issue is that, or a thing that a lot of people are currently worried about, is that the senior designers will all retire. And then you have these junior designers who didn't learn the process and didn't learn to direct, and all they know how to do is to prompt, because they also don't get any other jobs than that. Because we're just assuming right now that, the junior positions are disappearing. Yeah, so they will likely never learn that as from a mentor, from being an intern or whatever in an agency. And that, I mean, I think platforms like Qtures are really valuable for them to see that and learn that as well. How do
Yeah.
people currently find Qtures? Like, how are you marketing it? How are you building a community?
So I've actually just kind of gone to events and like speak with a lot of people. So that's one of my strategies. Social media, but I'm not really like not super fast or like full time on the social medias. But one of the things that I'm doing really a lot is reaching out to creatives directly. I feel like that's the most real thing you can do these days, and it brings kind of a win-win because I can offer them something, but also I can learn from them so much. Like from each creative, everyone has another process, and like future should really be shaped by creative processes from others. So I'm really letting myself get inspired by everyone I'm speaking to learn like from like how do you start? Like what's your process? Because like yeah, there is just not one single or like there's just not one thing that gets repeated by different people. Like it's all everyone has their own things, and that's super unique. So I'm mostly speaking to people directly, and for the rest it's a lot of word of mouth and like I think like the still the big marketing is going to come because I have some ideas that I really want to make true, because how we were talking about like both jobs and also our next generation. I feel like this focus on output is really kept in uh, kind of kept as the status quo by one thing that we all kind of work for, which is our portfolio. And I think like portfolios need a completely like makeover. Like portfolios as we know it, where we have only outputs, it shouldn't be a thing anymore. Like we have to make it differently. So I'm thinking about like probably using Qtures more as your portfolio where you can share your process for work makes a lot of sense. And I kind of want to market it more that way in the next year.
Speaking of process, how can you walk us through your process of building Qtures?
Yeah, yeah, sure. It was actually a really messy process. Well, as everyone like tells me, like their process is messy. It was very a lot of experimenting, but it was about October last year where I was working at that moment. I started in a AI startup as an artist and developed my product management role there, which was nice, but it was very structured working, like very organizational, very like I kind of lost my creative part. The only creative part was kind of like strategy a little bit and maybe some like creative ideas. But I didn't do almost anything with my own creative ideas. It sometimes would come, at night or some random moment where I thought like, oh, I want to make this interactive photo frame, and I would order like pieces of this photo frame and it ended up in my drawer for months and I haven't looked at it or done anything with it because I was just running out of time, of energy, and you just need to pay the bills, so I just cannot just quit my job and start playing around with experimentation of like creative projects. So it was this moment where I thought like, why not, like why can I not make money from experimentation with creative projects, because this is what I would love to do the most, basically. And I started just to realize, like, I was just reading like some business books, and I realized, like, okay, well, this is the whole problem of most artists who are working as entrepreneur or as like, or like as a, how do you call it, like as an artist. Like, this is uh, a tough, how do you call it? Like
Cookie
a
to crack. No, wait.
yeah,
Tough
yeah,
not
a tough
no, wait,
one,
not
like
cookie, but not to
something that a
crack.
lot of people are struggling with. So I wanted to, like, I knew I was going to quit my job at some point to work on a bigger project because I had like saved up for a certain amount of time and I thought, okay, this is the problem I want to solve. Well, did I get myself in some problem? Like, this is not like something that if it was a problem that can be solved easily by someone in half a year, they would have of course done it. But I realized also really quickly, like, okay, there is not just one simple method to solve this problem completely. So what I did was like, okay, I have this time. I have like 6 to 8 months to overlap kind of with my savings, but I want to start something like for creatives. So I started with all kinds of experiments. My first one was let's see if I can sell anything. Because I was also focused on like how can I make this somehow sustainable so that I have enough money to kind of keep going afterwards, right? So I was thinking like, okay, I need to learn how to sell something. So I started to try and sell my framework for quantum creativity. But it didn't work out. Like, people don't want to sell from me. And I read all these books and I thought like, why isn't it working? Like, they tell me how to sell things, but it's like not working. So are people not interested? It was not that people are not interested. They just didn't want to pay for it. So that makes sense. So it was experiment. I felt like, okay, maybe this is not the way to go. So I started thinking about something like what's the next thing I could do. Well, at the moment I was working with the prototyping tool. So I thought, okay, maybe I can make some monetization tools. So I started, that's kind of where the platform started in its first sort of form of like being able to monetize your process. So you would kind of like start journaling and you can put your process behind a paywall. But the problem with that is also like you need to get people in who will pay for it. Otherwise, like what's the incentive for people to do this? So the more I learned, like I kind of kept trying, and then I realized I think the most biggest, like, how do you call it, like epiphany, or like the thing where a realization was that um I just need to talk with creatives. Like I need to hear what they need, and I want to understand, like, if I'm gonna build for a certain group, like I need to be close to this group and understand them and like yeah, work that way. And so this is, I think, the most important step for me to really develop the platform, where right now it's more about open source creativity. It's not so much about like making money. It's about like this mindset of like, let me share how I work, because this is where the value is. And maybe, you know, money is important, and this is also why I'm now starting a job next to this, because I didn't make it through those 8 months making it sustainable financially. But it really also set me free to think about it much more as a like, okay, so if I don't need this to make money directly, like how can I make it the most valuable thing and the most uh, yeah, useful thing for people, not trying to kind of hurry into a direction, but really to develop it with this community and this, with all these creatives that I've been talking to. Because if there's one thing that really did come from this, which is really beautiful, it's like a beautiful community of a lot of creatives that want to share more of their process, and that I think is already like a bigger win than I had imagined in the beginning.
That's that's really such a nice summary of everything that went on. So you went all in, and then you tried to monetize it different ways, and it kind of didn't work out, but now you kind of like shifted the value from it, like from
Yeah.
making money off of it to like sharing the value. Is there like any plan of how you could monetize it in the future? I know it's not a priority right now, but is there like anything that you have in mind that could work
Yeah.
out?
Yeah, so I've also like one of the experiments kind of where I lately more looking into is like how can AI help to document the process, because I've also learned more and more that just documenting is not very welcome in a lot of people, their creative flow. Like when you're in your creative flow, you're like imagining and like it's very on a certain part of your brain. But when you have to like write it down and kind of summarize it and stuff, is completely different part of your brain. And it often feels just as an extra task. And if I don't gain anything from it, why would I do it? You know, unless it's needed, unless it's for your client who is asking for it, unless it's for, you know, we want to share something specific with someone, like a colleague or something, or unless it's for your portfolio. So I think this is something where I could really like think about it a little bit differently, as like, you know, this could be what in the future will help you get a job as a creative. So I'm thinking about making it this way maybe more valuable, but also like how can AI play a part of this? And of course, when using AI and, you know, making it more valuable, I think it might also be something I could monetize in the future. But it will be very much like creator first, uh, and value first, and then I'll see like if it really catches on. We'll see how I can just commit all my time to it and keep it going.
Even though you're starting a job, you said, you're still planning on working to make Qtures a better tool and developing it further.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll be working, but I will also have part of my time still devoted to working on Qtures and growing it. Yeah.
That's so nice. It's so amazing to see like the community helping each other and creating value for each other. I think this is like such an important part of the community. I'm being mindful of the time, but I still want to quickly touch upon the topic of quantum creativity.
Hmm.
Could you just give like a quick overview of what it is? I don't think we'll get too much into it, but just for the
Yeah.
listeners to understand what you were talking about before.
Yeah, like I said, how I was like super involved with the early AI community basically. Now there is a certain kind of search happening in the quantum creativity, or like quantum computing, quantum mechanics, like how we can leverage this kind of really weird natural behavior and kind of match it with creativity. Like on the one hand, it's like using it to really experiment with some of these mechanics to create art. I've seen already Like there's already multiple ways you can do that, so you can definitely like look that up. But on the other hand, there is so much kind of mystery to it, and so much of a, for example, a quantum state where still anything can happen or anything can be true. They can be really linked to creativity, which is also kind of open for or any kind of opportunities. So when I created the name Qtures, it comes from quantum futures, meaning like there's basically from one idea there's like a multiverse of opportunities or ways to go, and that kind of comes from just quantum physics and how yeah, like how there is like a multiverse of opportunities and like possibilities in quantum. Yeah.
Cool. I think that's a really good name. I love that.
Yeah, me too.
It really fits the whole idea of like sharing your process, and things go in many different directions when you do that. So it's very interesting.
And your book was about that too? Because you mentioned you wrote a book on quantum creativity.
I wrote like a framework, and yeah, so I'm taking different kind of rules basically from quantum physics, linking them directly to how you can use them in the creativity. Like for example, there's a thing called quantum tunneling, which is kind of like, yeah, like there's in creativity you can also like kind of like dig your way to other kind of connections and stuff. So I have this I have this paper somewhere published online. So if you would like, I can share it. So you can maybe share it with the audience.
Yeah. Well, we can put is it like a link? Because then I can
Yeah.
add it to the description. Okay,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do that.
Cool.
Definitely. One thing we always ask our guests is like advice they can give to someone who's maybe like wants to do something similar to what you're doing, or something you would have liked to have known before you started
Sure.
getting into your career.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I found, like I read it in a book last year and it really, really helped me. It was about like how when we growing up, we learn really like to wait until someone calls us out what we are or calls to us like, now you are in your, I don't know, bachelor. Now you have a master's degree. This is who you are. And people give you permission to use this as a title, you know. And for example, with creative technology, there are so many people kind of in this overlap searching for like, what is it that I like, what is that I want to do, what if I like art and technology, like. And I feel like having like when you become adult, in this book it was also mentioning like no one is going to give you permission, you just take it. Like if you want to be creative technologist, you just tell yourself like, okay, I'm now creative technologist and I'm gonna just do this, you know. Like, so I think one of the things that kind of set me free almost is like I can claim what I want for myself. I don't have to wait for permission from others to tell me like, oh, now you have, yeah, you can have this title, or now you're good enough to, you know, like stand on a stage and tell people about what you think. Like it's more about like give yourself that chance and give yourself that permission to step out.
I love the message.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you so much for being here and talking to us. It was such a
Yeah,
pleasure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. It was very nice. And I love the background of your wall color.
Fits your hair.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to this episode of Never Went to Business School. Don't forget to follow us here on Spotify. And if you enjoy our content, check out our YouTube channel for more educational videos and subscribe to our newsletter on Substack.